Comedian David Cross describes the process by which we got the Bible as follows. Back when the Bible was written, then edited, then rewritten, then rewritten, then re-edited, then translated from dead languages, then retranslated, then edited, then rewritten, then given to kings for them to take their favorite bits, then rewritten, then translated again, then given to the Pope for him to approve, then rewritten, and then edited again, then rewritten again, all based on stories that were told orally 30 to 90 years after they had happened to people who didn't even know how to write. And he goes on. Is that really true? Does this statement, uttered by a comedian, carry any weight when it comes to reality? How confident can we be that what was originally written down is what we have today? Hi, I'm Kirk, and I'm a scientist and a philosopher and a person who spends a lot of time thinking about the why questions in life. So if you're interested in discussions pertaining to God, science, and life, then please subscribe to my channel here where I'll be posting on a regular basis. You can also subscribe to my social media accounts, and the links are below. If you've engaged in conversations with your friends on the topic of the Bible and how we got it, you will very likely have encountered three popular urban legends. The first one is that the Bible has been translated so many times throughout the centuries that what we have today is probably greatly changed from what was originally written down. The second urban legend is that Constantine decided what would be in the Bible at the Council of Nicaea in AD 325. This popular belief usually includes the idea that there were lots of options for what should have been included, but Constantine and his buddies chose the ones that best suited their political purposes. The third urban legend is more of a conspiracy theory centering around why some Gospels were included in the Bible and others were not. The suggested conspiracy is that the church is trying to hide these forbidden Gospels from the general public. We'll look at the second and third beliefs in the next couple of videos, so let's just focus on the first one here. Could it be possible that the Bible started out as a simple recipe for chocolate cake, but as people copied the recipe and passed it on, changes accumulated with each copying such that eventually what we wound up with is what we call the Bible today? According to comedian David Cross, we might actually think something like that. Let's start with a question. The writings of Plato and Aristotle are studied in universities all over the world. Plato wrote somewhere between 400 BC and 347 BC. Aristotle wrote between 350 BC and 322 BC. How badly do you think their texts have been messed up over the past 2,300 years? How about Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, written around 50 BC? These accounts of his military campaigns are studied at academic institutions around the world. How badly do you think they have been corrupted by repeated copying over the past 2,000 years? Let's take a closer look at these ancient writings and then compare them with the Bible. The earliest known copy of Plato that we have today is called the Kirk manuscript, dated from around 895 AD. Since Plato would have written somewhere between 400 BC and 347 BC, this leaves us with a gap of more than 1,200 years between the original writings and the earliest copy we have today, a gap during which we have 0 copies of Plato. Nevertheless, scholars today believe that we probably have a reasonably close copy of what Plato actually wrote. Our earliest extant copy of Aristotle's writings are his biographical works dating from around 850 AD. That is more than 1,000 years after the original writing, during which we have 0 copies during that 1,000-year gap. Nevertheless, for both Plato and Aristotle, scholars think we have a pretty good representation of what these ancient Greek philosophers actually wrote. Finally, what about Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars? Our oldest surviving copy is known as the Amsterdam 73 manuscript, and it dates to around 840 AD. This leaves a gap of about 890 years between the original writing and our earliest manuscript today. Yet scholars today believe that what we do have is a reliable reflection of what was originally written, and it is studied by historians. Now, if I asked you how much weight we should give to a joke told by a comedian as a means of deciding how reliable our modern translation of the Bible is, what would you say? I hope you would say none at all, but it is surprising how many people are convinced something is sketchy if someone else tells a joke about it and laughs at it. In fact, logicians even have a name for this. It's called the appeal to ridicule fallacy. In reality, it does not logically follow that if you laugh at some idea, then that idea is automatically false. If that were the case, I would love to simply laugh at the tax laws, thereby falsifying them and saving myself a ton of money. So with this in mind, what is the actual situation with regard to our modern translations of the Bible? The best modern translations today are not translated or copied from versions that were produced just a few decades ago. Instead, they are translated from the earliest ancient manuscripts that we have available to us. This way, we avoid accumulating errors that might occur during copying. So how old are our oldest manuscripts of the Bible? And how big is the gap between when they were originally written and our earliest surviving copies? Most of our information on Jesus Christ comes from the New Testament, so let's just focus on that for the purpose of this video. Our earliest surviving fragment is known as P52 and contains a portion of the Gospel of John, specifically chapter 18, verses 31 to 33 and verses 37 to 38. It is dated sometime between 125 AD to 175 AD. Another manuscript fragment, known as P66 or the Bodmer Papyri, contains about 2/3 of John's Gospel and is dated to the late 2nd or early 3rd century. Our two earliest and most important copies of the Bible are the Codex Vaticanus and the Codex Sinaiticus, and date to around the mid-4th century. If you'd like to learn more, check out the website of my friend and colleague Wes Huff at the link below the video here. With all this in mind, here is the takeaway. Within about 300 years of the original writings, we have manuscripts of most of the New Testament, including fragments that date a good deal earlier than that. Now let's think back to Plato, Aristotle, and Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars and compare. For those ancient writings, the gap is roughly 1,000 years plus or minus a century. For the New Testament, the gap is roughly 300 years and a lot less for some sections of the New Testament. So what do you think you should infer from this information? How do you feel about the reliability of the comedian's joke now? Probably the most obvious observation is that the ancient manuscripts we have for the New Testament are much closer to the original writings than those for Plato, Aristotle, and Caesar's Gallic Wars. So if we were going to take seriously the comedian's belief about the reliability of the Bible, then we would need to apply that same standard to other ancient writings. If we did that, universities all over the world would have to toss most of what they study from ancient texts. On the other hand, if we apply the same standard to the reliability of the Bible as we do to the writings of Plato, Aristotle, and Caesar's Gallic Wars and many other ancient writings, then it appears that the Bible we have translated today directly from these ancient manuscripts is trustworthy. In other words, we can be confident that what we have today is very close to what was originally written down. In fact, it is so close that when we look at the thousands of old manuscripts for the New Testament in Greek, Latin, and Syriac, there are relatively minor differences between some of the manuscripts, mostly in terms of spelling, word choice, and obvious typos, but they are completely consistent on all points of Christian doctrine. Peter J. Williams, a lecturer at Cambridge University, warden of Tyndale House at Cambridge, and New Testament scholar, sums it up nicely when he writes this. Much of the study of classical Greek and Latin literature is built on a foundation that no one really acquainted with Greek and Latin manuscripts doubts, namely that most of such manuscripts from the 9th through the 16th centuries AD give us a reasonable representation of the text. When it comes to the Gospels in the New Testament, however, Williams writes that they are the best documented texts from antiquity by some margin and arguably the most scrutinized texts. us. So next time you pick up a good modern translation of the Bible, you are holding in your hands a modern translation direct from ancient surviving manuscripts that were copied remarkably close to the original writings. Now let's take a look in the next couple of videos at the Council of Nicaea and the Gospels that were not included in the Bible. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, or at least found it thought-provoking. And if you did, please share it, or you can leave a comment in the section below. And also, don't forget to hit the like button.